two older brothers went there before me. That's why I went there. Because the president said, I want to see you coming here yet. That's all I had to do. Apply, and that was all.
We have two more people coming in the door.
Okay.
We'll get started.
You're the chief.
If you're ready.
I'm just here to tell jokes and all that stuff. I moved my mic, I guess. Is that okay over here? Is that picking up? Okay. I got a big mouth, my wife tells me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out this evening on this rainy Wednesday evening. For those, I see a lot of familiar faces here, but for anybody who's new to our talks, my name's Gina Porter. I'm the Director of Recreation for the Southern York County Regional Recreation Commission, which encompasses Shrewsbury Township and New Freedom Borough. And of course, we welcome everybody in from all across the area. We have lots of exciting programs going on for people of all ages, so I encourage you to check out our flyers on the back table and our website. We're on Facebook, Southern York County Rec. Lots of cool stuff on there. So our talk tonight, we have Jeri Jones, and I will tell you a little bit about him in just a moment. But again, for anyone who's new, this presentation is recorded and live streamed on YouTube. For folks that maybe didn't want to come out in the rain tonight, can watch it from home. And also, if you want to watch it again, it'll be on YouTube. So Jeri will be speaking into the microphone so that YouTube can pick him up. And if you have any questions, raise your hand and I'll run over with this microphone. And it's not so the people in the room can hear you, it's so that the people at home can hear you if you're speaking into the microphone. So thank you for that. I've known Jeri for many years. He really does amazing talks on a lot of different topics. And tonight he's here to talk to us about York County geology. Jeri owns Jones Geological Services out of Spring Grove, Pennsylvania, where he studies the geology of southeastern Pennsylvania. As he was saying a moment ago, he got his Bachelor of Science degree in geoarchaeology from Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina. For the past 47 years, he's been researching and leading group field trips, traveling throughout the country, conducting educational programs for all ages. He's taught at a lot of our local schools, HACC Gettysburg, York College of Pennsylvania, Messiah University. He's received the Digman Award for Geological Excellence from the Eastern Chapter of the National Association of Geoscience Teachers. And where I met Jeri was at York County Parks, where he was employed for 38 years, providing wonderful, wonderful environmental education to students of all ages. He has authored 5 books, narrated a geologic education video series, and written numerous articles for all sorts of publications. He also co-hosts Zoom Rock Room on Tuesdays each month, and his love of auto racing. He serves as a clay consultant at area dirt tracks in eastern Pennsylvania. So Jeri does all kinds of cool things. And he will tell you during his presentation about some other opportunities to hear him speak and learn from him coming up in the future. So without further ado, Jeri Jones.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be here. Sponsored by the York County, Southern York County Recreation. And my name is spelled Jeri. Many people don't know why, but my parents were told you're going to have a daughter. So they named me before I was born, and when I was born, they had to take the doll babies back and get the bulldozers and dump trucks. So anyway, I just never changed it, because if I change it, then you think I'm the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll leave it the way it is. So our website's jonesgeo.us if you want to go check us out, and I do have my email address at the end. So York County geology, I could talk 5 hours on this, because there's really just so much to talk about. But I had to get my consultant in to say, what do I need to cut here? What can I not say that I should say? But anyway, So look at some of my favorite sites too. So during my program, I'm going to maybe bring up sites that you might have visited. You didn't know anything about it geologically, but you will now, right? So like, for example, if you go to Rocky Ridge Park, that'd be one place that will pop up in the slides. So anyway, we had a lot of mining going on in York County from the 1700s, of course, to now. So, limestone and dolomite, that's still all being produced. We have some very fine limestone and dolomite being quarried up in the York Valley area. Thomas Hill in York and down at Rice Hill. We were a large producer of iron ore from the 1760s to around 1910. Okay, had a little copper, had a little lead. We had just a little gold prospecting going on where people were actually making money. Sand, clay, decorative stone, and slate. That last one's my favorite one. You'll find out where the slate in York County is. Happens to be the best slate in the world. So I'll keep you on your toes for that one. Okay. So this is a geological map of York County, and it's hard to read, I know, but each color represents a certain rock type. Now I'm assuming, review your school days. Sedimentary rocks were formed in some kind of water. Could have been an ocean, it could have been a swamp, sandstone, shale, limestone, or sedimentary rocks. Igneous rocks made by magma inside the earth or on the outside, they're called lava. Okay, so the words basalt, granite, which we don't have any in York County, by the way, but basalt is a volcanic rock, and we have a rock in York County that you have seen called diabase. How many of you have been to Devil's Den at the Gettysburg National Military Park? All that rounded rock, that's called diabase. That was magma. That was deep in the earth, 4 to 5 miles deep when it was formed into a rock. Okay, and metamorphic rocks are ones that were either sedimentary or igneous that were changed by heat and pressure. So sandstone changes into a rock we call quartzite, which I will show you when we get to a certain region, okay? So heat and pressure was caused by, what do you think? What causes heat and pressure in our earth today? By the shifting of our plates. Continents coming together, continents pulling apart, continents even going past each other like this, heat and pressure. So this is actually now a physiographic province map of York County. And what I do here to make the story understandable is that we have divided York County into what we call physiographic sections. And if you know York County a little bit, you know that there's different terrains, like down here in the southern part of York County, which is that tannish big area, the southern third, it's rolling hills. There's no flat area on here, right? So that's called the Piedmont Uplands section. Okay? Where the arrows are pointing at the very top, on the left, it's South Mountain section. That's part of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And then the Great Valley, that's part of the Appalachian Mountain. It's called the section. If you ever drive Interstate 81, you're in the Great Valley. Down in Virginia, it's called the Shenandoah Valley. You get up to Carlisle, Harrisburg, it's the Cumberland Valley. And then you get closer downtown, it turns into the Lehigh Valley. It's all the same valley. We just rename it because we get tired of spelling Cumberland or Shenandoah, And then the green area below the blue arrows, that's called the Piedmont Gettysburg Newark Lowlands section. And then right through the center of York, that dark green, that's the, we call it the York Valley, but it's really called the Piedmont Lowlands section. So anyway, I'm going to cover each one of these sections because each one of these sections has a little different geologic story to tell us. How were we formed? And we're kind of build York County from the oldest rocks in the county up to the most recent. That's what we're going to kind of do. So I'm not going to go from north to south like I sometimes do. I'm going to skip around to get to the chapters that we need to talk about, okay? So we obviously are going to talk about South Mountain section first. Anybody ever been to Camp Tuckahoe? No? Well, I lived there for a few summers in my life. But anyway, Camp Tuckahoe is above Dillsburg. If you've been to Caledonia State Park, obviously that's not in York County, but Caledonia is right in the middle of the South Mountain section, Pine Grove Furnace, okay? But the South Mountain section of the Ridge and Valley, which is the Appalachian Mountains included here, is where we find the oldest rocks in York County, okay? And you see down the right-hand side, right above the N in section, you see where the mountain comes down to nothing out there to the right? That is the northern end of the Blue Ridge Mountains. They stop right there. It's called White Rocks Development. There's houses built on the northern face of South Mountain. If you go up to 74 heading to Carlisle and you turn right to go to Williams Grove Speedway, on your left-hand side, the mountain comes down to nothing. And that's the end of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The famous ones down in Tennessee, North Carolina, right? So that's why I put that picture in there. This is also where you find the highest point in York County. Camp Tuckahoe, as you can see, is at the top left-hand part of the screen, and there's a mountain southeast of there called Stonehead East. Has an elevation of 1,412 feet. That's the highest point in York County. The lowest point in York County, you want to guess where it is? It's an easy way to figure this out, folks. Where does the major body of water flow out of the county? The Susquehanna River at the York County line down east of Delta or south of Beach Bottom Nuclear Power Plant, right? That elevation is 106 feet. So it drops 1412 minus 106, whatever that is. That's the difference in elevation between the highest and lowest points. So you already learned two things now in the first 8 minutes, okay? All right. So the oldest rock in South Mountain in York County is a volcanic rock called rhyolite. You never heard of rhyolite, I'm sure, but rhyolite's a brother to granite. If magma doesn't get to the surface to create volcanoes, it solidifies as a rock inside the earth, it turns into granite. If it does get to the surface and comes out of a volcano as lava, it turns to rhyolite. Okay, so if you go around Pine Grove Furnace, Laurel Lake, there's a lot of rhyolite at Laurel Lake, near Pine Grove Furnace. But down around Caledonia State Park, there's a different type of rhyolite still in South Mountain, where they actually prehistoric people quarried the rock and made their stone tools out of. There's quarry sites down there that we know about. And you could actually go visit if you really went to. So anyway, so that's the oldest rock. I say old, how old am I talking about? Make it easy, 600 million years old. We had volcanoes in York County. And that's not the only place you're going to find out. And on top of the mountain, if you're an Appalachian Appalachian Trail walker, like Gina over here, she sees a lot of quartzite. Okay, that was sandstone, sedimentary rock. It was metamorphosed. The crystals in the rock got to be bigger, and the rock got denser. And the place called Center Point Knob, above White Rocks at the end of the South Mountain, is all quartzite. Okay, I'm not sure if that's really the center of Appalachian Trail any longer. It used to be in the older days, but I understand the Appalachian Trail has been rerouted a couple places, so it's kicked that midway point either north or south of there. But anyway, there's a place called Center Point Knob where you can see the quartzite. That used to be sand at a beach. All right, so the geologic history here. What do they represent? What does South Mountain tell us? Well, we had a supercontinent. You know what a supercontinent is? Everything's glued together into one, called Rodinia. 1 billion years ago, when I was a small kid. You know.
I remember it well.
Yeah. All the continents were glued together down around the South Pole. And they got what we call rifted apart. They got broken apart. I'm going to show you a modern day example when we get to another supercontinent coming up a little bit later in the story. But Rodinia, you see that word in the middle called Laurentia? That's us. We were not called North America then because North America wasn't born. Neither was the Atlantic Ocean. There's Laurentia. That's North America. We were actually turned 90 degrees to what we are today. And we were down, I said, around the South Pole. In fact, on this slide, there's Laurentia. The yellow line, that represents where the Blue Ridge Mountains were. They were the volcanic, okay? They were they had the volcanoes, which was rifting the continents apart. The volcanoes were actually rifting. You think about the island of Iceland. Iceland is actually pulling Europe and North American plates apart because it sits on the mid-oceanic ridge. So the volcanic action at Iceland is pulling those apart. That's exactly what happened to Rodinia, and that's what we see in South Mountain. Between the rhyolite and I didn't show you the other volcanic rock called basalt, because we don't have any basalt actually in York County in South Mountain. Further south, there is. Anyway, so this is the rifted apart of Rodinia. So when you see South Mountain, if you can see it from Brown's Orchard, or if you're up around Dillsburg or Caledonia, you can tell your friends, this was a rift of Rodinia. Okay, we're going to jump down to the next section, the Piedmont. Now we're going to be in the Piedmont the rest of our show. And there's two upland sections. In the east, it's called the Hellam Hills. In the west, they're called the Pigeon Hills. I won't get into the history of the pigeon, why it's called Pigeon Hills. There's actually a pretty good story now about why it is, but I won't get into that for time tonight. But anyway, geologically, they are identical. They have volcanic rocks. That's the Accomack. Anybody ever go to the Accomack Inn before it closed down? Oh, you did? And you? Oh, you went by. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say, you went there to eat, but did not take me along. Okay. So the road cut that you go through, make the turn at the river, which you can see just in the left-hand corner. At Accomack, that is the word basalt. It's called metabasalt because it's been changed by heat and pressure a little bit. So that's all basalt. Again, that's volcanic activity. Again, related to the breakup of Rodinia. That's the same age as the volcanics in South Mountain. 600 million. Okay. Go to Rocky Ridge Park, you see all this beautiful rock with rounded quartz fragments in it, quartz pebbles. Okay? We think that was formed like a delta, where one body of water was flowing into a larger body of water, similar to the Codorus Creek flowing into the Susquehanna River. Okay? And it's called a conglomerate. It's all silica, but the quartz pebbles, by the roundness, we calculate that they've actually traveled in some kind of water for maybe 50 miles to get well rounded. They got tossed and well done. The two dark fragments in the middle there are rhyolite. You heard that word before. There is rhyolite in the Hellam Hills, on Wizard Ranch. Anybody that goes to Wizard Ranch to hike now, which is right across the street from Accomack, there's rhyolite there. So again, volcanic rock, and that got disturbed and put into this creek stream and became part of the conglomerate. So this is one of the oldest sedimentary rocks in all of Pennsylvania, if you're at Rocky Ridge. Just east of Rocky Ridge, there's a place called Chimney Rocks. It's the same rock. It's conglomerate. Just by the stack sticking up, they were given the name of Chimney Rocks. Pretty popular place to hang out way back in the early 1900s. It's now on private land. The owners don't mind people going back to study the geology if you ask them. But for any partying sake, no more, right? But that's very close to the Channel 8 transmitter tower. And
Where is that near?
pardon?
The Chimney Rocks, where is that near?
They're actually the Chimney Rock Road. If you go up, if you go up Price Creek Road off of the Helm interchange, get off of 30 at Helm, and you would make a left. That's Price Creek Road. If you go up Price Creek Road, you actually will intersect Chimney Rock Road, and you would make a left. And
That's over near the Susquehanna River?
it's not that far down. We're probably 3 miles from the river yet at that point. But there's a fossil in some of these rocks. It's called Scolithus. See those tubes? Okay. We believe, we're 99.5% sure, that it was a marine worm that lived at the beach. That's not the worm, that's his burrow. And that's our problem. We have never found the worm. Worms do not fossilize. They're all soft-bodied parts, so they decay away. But the story behind this is that there was a naturalist that lived at Chickies Rock over Lancaster County named Samuel Haldeman, who found one at Chickies Rock. He did not know what they were, although he was a very well-versed gentleman. And he sent a sample to some guy named Charles Darwin. Hey, Charlie, what are these things? And Darwin actually wrote back and said, Scolithus. And back then they were about 600 million years old. Today they're dated around 541 million years old. So as a scientist, we haven't seen the animal. So I can't say 100% that's what they are, but all the research that's been done on them, it is a marine worm living at the beach. There's marine worms living at the beach today. I hate to tell you that, but when you go to the Atlantic Ocean today and this summer and put your feet in the water, there's little worms looking at the bottom of your feet saying, "Yuck." They're not Scolithus, but there are still marine worms. They're actually named from Chickies Rock. If you go on the internet, look for Scolithus. The type site, Chickies Rock, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, USA. And if you find them anyplace else around the world, like in Germany or Pine Grove Furnace, that rock is 541 million years old. It's a dating tool. That piece came from behind the York Harley-Davidson plant. There had been a sand pit up on the hill that was actually still owned by Kinsley. They just reclaimed the quarry, filled it back in as much as they could. But I saw tubes up there 10 feet long. Now that's all been covered up. All right, the Pigeon Hills between Thomasville and Hanover. The geology, like I said, it's the same. We got volcanic rock. Here's the metabasalt. You might be able to see in the rock there's little pits. Those were gas bubbles in the lava that broke and left cavities. And they have not been filled in by other minerals today. So there's several nice little exposures of the metabasalt on Beaver Creek Road. If you know the Pigeon Hills pretty well, there's a Beaver Creek Road that goes north and south on the north face of the Pigeon Hills. So again, that's volcanic activity, just like the Helm Hills. Here's your quartzite, place called Pulpit Rock. That was a historical place back in the 1700s with the Monocacy Road actually down below the Pigeon Hills. You could actually stand on the rock and get a beautiful view of the southern part of York County. It's now gotten to be grown up with trees, so the view is not really spectacular anymore, but that's all quartzite. And yes, you can find worm tubes there if you look around. Just chase the snakes away first. All right, so we're going to drop down next to the Piedmont Lowlands. as I called it before, the York Valley. Okay, that's where Route 30 is. That's where the city of York sits. And by the way, I did not tell you, why do we have hills and valleys in York County? It's because of the rock. Hard rocks underlie the higher elevations. Soft rocks underlie the valleys, like limestone. York Valley. Okay, so in York Valley, the major rock is, of course, limestone. Okay, and that's what we quarry for. This is along the rail trail, the northern extension, actually just a little bit west of John Rudy Park. What we're doing here with the limestone is that we're continuing to build a continental shelf. Y'all know what a continental shelf is? Off the coast of North America, we have a continental shelf today. All the sediment being washed in. Well, Rodinia and then Laurentia, they started to build a continental shelf. What I showed you with the quartzite in South Mountain, and what I just showed you with the quartzite in the Helm and Pigeon Hills, they're starting to build a continental shelf off of Laurentia. And this is more continental shelf building, the limestone. We had organisms living in the ocean that were like corals, and they were secreting calcium carbonate, which is what makes limestone. So where you have limestone, you have a lot of limestone kilns. Every farmer who had limestone on his property at one time had a kiln on their property. They made their own lime. And then what started to happen? Well, at the end of the season, I, as a farmer, I got lime left over. I'm gonna sell it to somebody down here. In Shrewsbury, there's no limestone down here. You want some of my lime? And then the other farmers were doing the same thing. Then they all said, why don't we just go into the quarry business and quarry the limestone off of our farms? Don't worry about farming anymore. We're just going to do a quarry and make lime. So, a kiln is what evolved into quarries. Okay, so this is a nice one down at Front Street in Wrightsville. It was actually the start of the J.E. Baker Company, which is a big limestone quarry industry in York County. I'm hoping that somebody takes this over fairly soon and restores it, because it's getting to be kind of touchy. So our quarries, anybody ever stop at Thomasville and look down in the quarry from Beesecker Road? That's underground mining. They have, I understand that they have like 55 miles of tunnels under Thomasville, the York Airport. They're down at least 400 feet, and they're taking out the limestone. They want the purest limestone. So they're doing all strictly underground mining. Whereas this one, RHI Magnesia, this was originally the J.E. Baker Quarry on Baker Road out in West York. You know where the Sheets is now, along 30 and 616 intersection? Behind Sheets is RHI Magnesia Quarry, now German owned. And they're doing a very special thing with their, actually they take more dolomite out of the earth than limestone. Their dolomite's actually being used for refractory brick. Where do refractory bricks get used? In iron kilns. You cannot melt steel in a steel vessel. So you make these refractory bricks that have a high melting point, and a third of their products that they are producing are exported. And they're only one of four quarries in the world doing this. So they're very specialized in what they're doing. But they're down 6 levels. Each level is 50 feet in depth. And it's about a mile long now. The pit, this is a little bit of an older shot, but the pit now, east to west, is about a mile long. It's huge. You can't see it from the neighborhood, and that's fine with them. Okay. We like old pictures of quarries. We found this down in Philadelphia, the Palmer Lime. Where was that? If you ever drove down Hoax Mill Road and you're heading out of York off of Market Street, on the left-hand side there's now a big lake. that formed there in the last 10 years, that's the old Palmer limestone quarry. Okay? Everybody was concerned that the water was going to come high and flood out the road. That's not going to happen. Okay, but that was called the Palmer. Mineral you have in limestone is called calcite. Okay, calcite is a very common mineral, and it can grow very large crystals, very beautiful crystals, when it has area to grow, like in a cave or some big void. And some of the calcites that have been collected out of a couple of our quarries in York have made it to the Smithsonian. If you go to the Smithsonian Mineral Collection and look at their calcite display, you're going to find an orange calcite in there marked York, Pennsylvania. That came out of the quarry on Roosevelt Avenue, which is now part of the York Building Products quarry. So some beautiful calcite crystals have been collected, although you can't have access to the quarry anymore. I threw this in. Here's a word called diabase, D-I-A-B-A-S-E. I can't do that. But at Stony Brook, you probably never paid attention, but if you go off of Market Street back toward Pleasant Acres, you go across the bridge over the railroad. If you stop on the bridge, look to your left, you'll see a railroad cut in the top right-hand corner. That's the rock called diabase. That's an igneous rock, like Devil's Den, and that's what we call a dike. That's 20 feet wide, but it runs about 75 miles from southern York County the whole way up to close to Elizabethtown. And that's a classic railroad cut. You can see where the magma came up through the limestone. It baked the limestone. But anyway, if you walk through Rocky Ridge Park or on trail number 4 at the south end of the park, you'll find round, orangish-looking boulders. That's the diabase from Stony Brook Dike, passing through Rocky Ridge. If you go to Cador's Furnace, the Cador's Creek has a little riffle in the stream just west of the bridge. That's because of the dike. So I just threw that in for that reason. A fossil we find is called a trilobite. Yeah, well, he's actually a very far ancestor to a horseshoe crab. Heads to the right, body and tail. They lived in the ocean. 515 million years ago, they just appeared. Don't know where they came from. A lot of times, the fossils did evolve from one thing to another as geologic time advanced forward. But the trilobites just mysteriously, they were there. Like, wow, where'd they come from? So York, in particular, Lancaster County, they have some trilobite species that maybe there's only 2 or 3 of species ever found in the world, and they were found in Lancaster County. So that's a very nice one called Olanellus. We have limestone, you have sinkholes. Now we get into the geologic hazards, okay? I could spend a lot of time telling you about specific sinkhole stories in York. Okay, West Philadelphia Street lost 2 houses because of sinkholes. The old West Manchester Mall, that's the classic. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to scare anybody. But the West Manchester Mall, which is now the West Manchester Road, but they've had their share of sinkhole problems. I used to be able to walk into a sinkhole on the mall side and go under 30 and come out at Olive Garden. Yes.
What causes sinkholes in York?
It's mostly our acid rain attacking the limestone. Limestone will dissolve with acid rain. And if there's a fracture in the limestone, over a course of time, the rain will make that crack bigger. And eventually it will be gravity fed and fall down.
Oh, okay.
Some limestones are more prone for sinkholes than other limestones. That's the good news. Okay, but we have several formations in York County that are very prone. The The Bootlegger Sinkhole. Anybody been to the York County Firemen's Training Center in Amicksville? In the middle of their property is a sinkhole that was active at the end of the Ice Age. 13,000 years ago to actually today. Okay, and down in the sinkhole, cavers, the local Spelunker Club, found Ice Age fossils. Mammals, actually. They got caribou out of there, Arctic rabbit, different types of bats. I took the list out because of our timing, but it actually was, at one time, it was one of 4 Ice Age fossil sites for mammals in the world. And when the York County Firemen's Training Center was built, the fire chiefs actually voted, do we want to close it up and destroy it, or do we want to keep it open for research? And they voted we'll keep it open for research. So it still has that still door over it. The frame is no longer there. Over in Hanover, at the Bethlehem Quarry, which is now Vulcan, the quarry north of Hanover, they found the mastodon mandible. 15,000 years old. And they've actually discovered vertebrae of the mastodon. Carnegie Institute from Pittsburgh came in and did excavating back in the mid-1970s of the mastodons. When the quarry does get into that area where the sinkholes are, they are very well aware that we could be hitting some valuable stuff here. And in fact, I was there not too long ago, and the superintendent waved me into his office. I want to show you something. They got a vertebrae from a mastodon. So anyway, so sinkholes are pretty cool. If they don't affect you, right? All right. So, oh yeah, up in the top, the Great Valley. I always forget about the Great Valley. Just a very small section of York County is in the Great Valley. As this picture will show you, I-83, Interstate 83, from the Turnpike, well, basically from the Turnpike as you go up the hill toward New Cumberland, you have just moved into the Great Valley. Okay, it's like the York Valley. Lots of limestone, some shale involved. And there's a quarry called Strayer and Lefevre Quarry. That's still, it's inactive now, but it's at Williams Grove. If you drive back Williams Grove Road, nearing the creek where you turn left to go into the park at one time, on the right-hand side under the power lines, you'll see that scar into the hillside. And that's all I'm going to say about the Great Valley. Okay, it was building, again, continuing to build our continental shelf. 500 to 515 million years ago. And then finally, the Piedmont Upland section. That's where we are tonight. Yay! Oh no. Okay, the southern third. It's pretty much all metamorphic rocks. Okay, these rocks have been altered down here, as you're going to find out from what here in a couple minutes. Like for example, look at this. This is along the Heritage Rail Trail. If you the first underpass coming south of Glen Rock, there's a trailer park there. If you walk the rail trail past the trailer park, very short distance, 200 feet. On your right-hand side, that outcrop right there, that's a rock called schist, S-C-H-I-S-T. It's a metamorphic rock. It was a shale. But you see how the rock has been folded. Okay, that's a great example. That's one of the best examples of seeing folding in the rock in southern York County. And that's basically how all the rock in southern York County is. Cador State Park. Have you ever asked yourself the question, again, probably not, why is the lake so long that way? I have. I got answers. Like right there. It's because there's a fault under the lake. It's called the Martic Line. It's a major fault named from Marticville over in Lancaster County. But it's a major fault that goes from northern Maryland through York County, Lancaster County. Actually, it goes across the river at Long Level. and goes across the river below Safe Harbor Dam, and goes the whole way over to just west of Philadelphia, where it joins another fault. This has been a, as I said, it's a major fault. It's now been accepted as a fault. It's been a subject of debate amongst geologists that just won't listen to me for a long time, but now they've accepted the fact, okay, it's a fault. The problem is, we only have one rock exposure of it, and that's over along the low grade Enola Rail Trail in Lancaster County, just north of Quarryville. There's an outcrop where you can actually see where rock has been pushed up and over another rock. So anyway, the Mordic line, the Cador's Creek, before they built the lake, the Cador's Creek was flowing fairly straight through there because it was following the crack in the earth. Water does not want to work for a living, right? It wants to find the easiest route. Here's the fault. Hey, look at that. Self-made channel for me. So when they built the lake, I just kind of magnified the straightness. There it is. Howard Tunnel. There's a fault at Howard Tunnel. Of course, I don't care where I go. My wife says I have faults. It don't matter where I go. But the south portal of the Howard Tunnel on the left-hand side, if you know what to look at on the rock, you'll be able to see lines going up and down on the rock where rocks actually have rubbed against each other going this way. So you need the angle of the sun at a certain angle and kind of a fresh rock. The weathered rock doesn't show it too well. But there actually is a fault at the Howard Tunnel. And again, the rock is really folded also. Down south of Glen Rock, north of Taylor Hill Road on the rail trail, you might find some rock that have holes in. Metabasalt, there's the same rock as we saw in the Pigeon and Helm Hills in South Mountain. And there's different outcrops between Glen Rock and New Freedom, where you have that metamorphic rock called schist for a bit, then you see this harder, denser, more squarish rock sticking out. That's called basalt. And then you go back to schist. The holes are conclusive, though. That's the volcanic rock. Again, gas bubbles. 550, 600 million. It had to do with the breakup of Rhodini again. I included this because this is a neat story. Indian rock. One of the most famous rocks in York County. Anybody know where Indian Rock is? You've heard of Indian Rock Dam, Indian Rock Dam Road, Indian Rock Dam Campground, Indian Rock Dam Elementary School.
Must be there.
Okay, well, the story goes that back in the early 1990s, the editor of York Sunday News, his name was Harry McLaughlin, published a postcard that somebody gave him from Indian Rock. In fact, that's the postcard there. This is called Pulpit Rock, too. Harry put it in the Sunday News, like, does anybody know where this rock's at? And me being York County geologist, I didn't know. I was embarrassed to tell Harry, I don't know where it's at. Along the Cador's Creek. So I did a little homework, and I remember within the book of the Geology of York County, written in 1939 by two fine geologists, they had a picture of an isolated rock sitting in a valley with the Reservoir Hill, where the Outdoor Country Club is today, in the background. 1 mile north of Brillhart Station. Ooh. So actually, my wife and I, on a nice day, went to a ride, went to the Indian Rock Dam, and I showed the employees this picture. Now, I don't know anything like that around here. And I went around the block to where actually now the rail trail crosses the Indian Rock Dam Road. There's a farmhouse sitting there. And the person said, well, there's a rock back here, back behind the house here. That might be it. Can you walk back and look? Yeah, help yourself. There it was. So I go back over to Indian Rock Dam employees. I said, You know where that rock is? It's at the base of your dam. Looks like that today. It's quartzite. There's that word again. It's a hard rock, and all the softer rock around it that was shale has weathered away, and it has left that whale-back type of rock, about 15 feet tall. And the story goes that the Indian chief used to stand up on the top, preach to the tribe, called Pulpit Rock or Indian Rock. And there was a 5th grader at Indian Rock Elementary School that even wrote an article about it after they learned that we found it. And also now, it's actually owned by the Corps of Engineers. They put a fence around it now because we brought attention to it. We don't want anybody going in there. So anyway, that's Indian Rock, southeast corner of York County, the Delta area. The best slate in the world, called the Peach Bottom Slate, geologically speaking. This is the largest of many quarries. This is actually 3 quarries that did combine their operations. It's about 3/4 of a mile long. From the top of the rock down to the water is about 50 feet. And the water depth, I understand from scuba divers, is that it's from 25 feet to 100 feet deep. It was the second most deadliest quarry for drownings back in the late 1990s because it was owned by attorneys in Baltimore who didn't give a hoot about who was on the property. And these people from Delaware, Maryland, they weren't locals that came in and drowned. It was the Delaware, Maryland people that came in, jumped off the cliffs, hit the cold water, and cramped and all that. So it's now owned by a family that lives right across the street, and they've actually built themselves a little recreational area, a nice pavilion on top, but you wouldn't be able to see it if it was there now. But anyway, the best building slate in the world because the Welsh came here starting in 1840. They immigrated from Wales. They already knew how to quarry slate. They heard Delta was really booming. They came to Delta, and they showed us Irish people how to quarry for slate. And the slate became very, very popular. And they lived not with the Scott-Irish people. They built their own huts, mining shacks, like they lived in Wales. This is called Coulson Town, the only remaining Welsh village in the country, actually. And the local folks down there, Don Robinson, primarily the Old Line Museum, which is in Delta, have bought several of the cottages, and they've restored this one. This is an older picture. They've restored this one, and they're finishing up the one around the corner. So if you ever have a chance to go to Delta, it's pretty cool. Tombstones, that was the first use of the slate. Now if you look at that tombstone, look at the engraving on it. Mr. Roberts died in 1866. Look how fresh that writing is. If you had a marble tombstone, you wouldn't be able to read it today. The slate never wore out. Too good. On the left is the world famous slate clock. 7 feet 2 inches tall. It's in the Old Line Museum on display. Built by a local resident of actually Cardiff, Maryland in about 1910. Made out of 3 different slates in Pennsylvania. It's a one-of-a-type piece. Smithsonian has been wanting it for many years. And the people in Delta said, it's not leaving. It belongs to us. And the heritage at Delta is just overwhelming. How many of you have been to Biltmore Mansion? You've been there? Oh, yeah, you were in Nashville. Yeah. If you ever go to Biltmore, the country's largest mansion, the roof came from Delta. Vanderbilt's one of the best slate in the world for my mansion. That's a picture on the right that they loaned me of the boxcars bringing the slate in. Okay, and last time we were there, we actually took the architectural tour where they take you up on the roof, and you can actually fill the slate whoopee. But the slate is not nailed. It is tie wired to channel iron by wire. They glue the wire onto the back of the slate, and they want to put holes because that increases the weathering. So they just glued the wire on the back, and somebody got carpal tunnel doing that. So if you ever go to Biltmore, just check out the roof. Don't pay the extra money to go on that architectural tour. And the jailhouse in Delta was built out of peach bottom slate. That's back in the alley. Very few people would get to see the jailhouse. I understand the story is that the person who built the jailhouse, he went out and celebrated one night for completing the project, and got drunk and got thrown into the clink. So there are two jail cells in there. We were actually there one day, and the owner was cleaning it out. I got to see the inside. So here's your chance. Spring Grove Area Historical Society. We're doing a bus trip to Delta on July the 14th. Dedicated to Delta, 8:30 to 3. We'll leave Spring Grove and get to Delta and do the tour of the cemetery, which is really cool. And the only active Welsh congregation in the country remaining meets in Delta at the Welsh Church, Colson Town, and Don actually got his permission to go to the Folk House Recording from the top view. That's very special. That don't happen to everybody. Don't like that trip? You can go to Gettysburg in September with us. Spring Grove Area Historical Society. We do a bus tour. How did the geology affect the Battle of Gettysburg? It did. Very much it did. Like, for example, remember that rock, the rock called diabase? Devil's Den? Okay, if you have diabase in your property and you try to plant a tree, you're not going to do it. You go down 5 inches, you're going to hit bedrock. That's where a geologist sleeps, on bedrock. Well, in military, the best way to protect yourself is to trench, right? You can't trench at Gettysburg. 5-inch hole is not going to protect you much. So they had to hide behind rocks. That's why they built the rock walls. Like on Little Round Top, they built those walls overnight. The Union did, because they knew the Confederates were coming up here the next day. We had to build those. I told you that story because there's one more step to that story. As I was doing a tour on a bus trip, and I was just telling those people about what I just told you, and some person raised their hand and said, "Why couldn't they hide behind the monuments?" I said, "The next bus will be through here in 20 minutes." Anyway, if you want to go to Delta or Gettysburg, it's on their website, Spring Grove Area Historical Society. It's a fundraiser for them. They try to restore some very valuable historical artifacts. All right, geologically, the geologic history, 540 million years ago, about when the Scolithus worm tubes were living in our ocean at the beach. The green is us. That's Laurentia. We're now moving north. We're still rotated 90 degrees to what we are today. 500 million years ago, this is a cross section. There's Laurentia, and there's the continental shelf that I've been talking about for the last number of minutes, into what we call the Octorora Sea. And there was a microcontinent piece out there in the middle of the ocean, which is called the Iapetus Ocean. And the volcanic islands. There was a chain of volcanic islands that existed off the coast. They eventually did collide with our east coast about 420 million years ago. But we felt very little effect of that here. That was all out, in Maryland, Delaware, the Wilmington, Delaware area, east of Baltimore. Actually, the whole way up down the east coast from Newfoundland, the whole way down into Georgia, was the volcanic islands. So when they got added onto our crust, real estate agents were putting for sale signs up. Okay, of course it took 20 million years for this stuff to happen. It didn't happen overnight. And then we have what we call the Allegheny orogeny. You asked me about orogeny earlier. And orogeny is a mountain building process happening about 270 million years ago, where Africa and North America came together like a head-on crash. And our rocks that were forming, that are here now, actually formed about 50 miles to our southeast. And our crust got pushed 50 miles to the northwest by that collision. Remember the fording I showed you along the rail trail? That was due to the Allegheny orogeny. The Appalachian Mountains were pushed up because of the Allegheny orogeny. The Martic line, the Martic fault, was activated because of the orogeny. Yeah, so most of the faulting did. So you see the word Acadian orogeny on there. That's the effect of the volcanic islands colliding with us, 420 million. And then we come along 270 million years ago, and Africa collides with us. So that made a lot of jumble out of our crust. And our last little area, after all the excitement happened with the Allegheny orogeny, the northern third of York County, the Gettysburg Newark lowlands section of the Piedmont. This is our youngest rocks. If you go up 83, we're talking about Amixville to the Turnpike. Up 74, it's like Shiloh to South Mountain. The rock is kind of a reddish. It's sandstone, shale, breccia, which is a rock similar to conglomerate, except it has angular fragments in, and a little bit of limestone. Okay. Things were pretty quiet because we had a supercontinent that had come together called, anybody reading my mind? The next supercontinent called Pangea. Oh yeah, that's right. I saw her reaction back there. Okay. Pangea has come together. Okay. So these rocks, the northern part of York County, is reflecting when Pangea was trying to pull apart. Rifting apart, just like, remember Rodinia did? About 200 million years ago, Pangea was trying to rift apart. So you ever hear of brownstone buildings, like the old Royal Church up in Dover Township, made out of reddish sandstone, brownish sandstone. Okay, that's where the rock's coming from. The brownstone buildings. There's that word diabase again. Pinto Park. 98% of the rocks in Pinto Park are diabase. Wounded, just like Devil's Den, okay? And this was a rock that rehealed Mother Earth. So, before diabase was around here, our Mother Earth had been stretched. Pangea was trying to pull apart. Things were stretching, just like you taking a blob of Play-Doh. Block of Play-Doh and you pull it apart. That's what was happening to our crust. So we had lots of cracks in Mother Earth, and magma came up through those cracks, just like when we get cut, we get a scab. Diabase was trying to be a scab to Mother Earth. Hold her together. If you look really carefully, this site's at Rossville, just north of Rossville, on the old York Road going north toward Dillsburg. You find a little bit of copper mineralization. Economically not valuable at all. It's pretty to collect. There are several other places that we have found this too, but I'm not going to give you out those locations because they're all on private land. And there's gold in York County, as I mentioned earlier. About 15% of the streams in York County have gold in them. Most of them were down here. Spring Valley Park has gold. Down around Delta area. If you go up to the north, any stream between Rossville, Wellsville, Dillsburg, and Grantham has gold in it. I guarantee you that. Unfortunately, the gold flakes in the rate are not exercised. They're pretty small. 15,000 flakes to make 1 ounce. But in this area, you find some fossils. Petrified wood. You also find fern fossils that tell us that the climate was tropical. It was like the Everglades. Because that's where we were at that point. 200 million years ago, we were about where Miami, Florida is today. We were tropical. That's a palm tree found near York Haven. My wife calls that a piece of scared wood. It's petrified. Here, rock sands at a fossil slate. Again, it's on private land. We find these ostracods. They're better known as clam shrimp. They do live today yet, ostracods. But we found these in this shale and sandstone. And there was a debate about was this water that was making these rocks, was it brackish, marine, or fresh water? Ostracods only live in fresh water. So our discovery put a stamp on it. And there were dinosaurs. This is during the Mesozoic era, folks. The Triassic and the Jurassic. And we have dinosaur footprints in York County. Okay, the one on the left is called a graulator. One on the right is called a Triopus. Graulator, we think, I took that out at the time, but graulator, we think about 6 feet tall, 8 feet long. He was a theropod, so he walked on his feet pretty much only. The Triopus actually did walk on all fours. In fact, right above his name, you'll see another little indentation. That's his handprint. If you go on the Gettysburg tour with us in September, we'll show you dinosaur footprints on the battlefield. Then we had Dr. Robert Staley, who lived out near Zion's View in the early 1900s. 1910, actually, this happened. He was walking the creek bed, and he saw a snout of an animal sticking out of the creek bed. Huh? What's that? He collected it and got it identified, and it turned out to be this guy here, a rudiodon. He lived with the dinosaurs. He's not a dinosaur, he's a reptile, but looks like a modern-day crocodile sort of thing. But there is actually a site now called Zion's View, reptile site, where the State Museum did do excavations there in 1970 and 71, removed a number of skeletons of the rudiodon. Here's a tooth found in the Conewago Creek by a Robert Bear. He was an amateur fossil collector in York County. Story behind here, real quick, is the fact that the old York County Heritage people brought me a box of rocks one day. We have these in the basement. We don't know what they are. You know, are they good to keep or not? And most of them were ones they get rid of. But I opened this one bag and it was a sandwich bag, and that tooth was in it. I guess my eyes must have gotten really, really big, like, oh my gosh, you know. So it got sent back to Yale University with the rest of Mr. Bear's stuff. And also they found a Coscinodon. I call him a 7-foot-long salamander. He lived with the rudiodon and dinosaurs. They laid on the lake shores, or like the Everglades, the lake shore, the ponds, whatever, choosing their food. Earthquakes in this area. Dillsburg area, 2008 to 2010. It was the Great Dillsburg earthquake swarm, and I was one of the. We were some of the lead people on it. 4,000 earthquakes in a year and a half, and nothing major. They were small. We have theories about what caused them, but we don't have anything conclusive. That's recorded from Millersville. We had our own seismograph system set up, a portable one, to record. That's actually 4 recording stations that we had set up in the Dillsburg area, recording the same earthquake. And then after an earthquake, the computer plotted on maps. So Dillsburg's on the left-hand side, the green and red dots are earthquakes recorded by our two seismic systems that we had there in the course of about 9 months or so. So it was interesting. But they stopped before we got a good answer. So, what was going on? Here's Pangea, the second supercontinent, and we actually got rifted apart into the world we know of today. And what's going on? Where is the rift today that you can actually relate to? Lower left-hand corner, the northeast corner of Africa, the Red Sea. That's being pulled apart, just like we were trying to be pulled apart with Rodinia. And if the northern part of York County and the rest of this area would have been rifted apart, today I'll be doing this program in Morocco, not North America. In fact, here's the rift basins up and down the east coast where it was trying to split apart. We're in the Gettysburg, number 14 there, but that's to the right of the red is was trying to go with Africa, and to the left was trying to stay with North America. So over by South Mountain, I put this in for a little humor, so make sure you laugh. Along South Mountain, the rocks in South Mountain are 560 million years old. The rocks in the Rift Valley are 200. So there is a fault along the border there where I can actually stand and have the fault going between my legs. That's down close to York Springs, that one, but I can do the same thing up above Dillsburg on Campground Road outside Dillsburg. And iron ore. There's the iron districts of York County. One time we had 170 plus iron mines working from the 1760s to, like I said, 1910s. So there's iron mines in those districts with our varied geology. If you play golf at Little Creek, out near Spring Grove at Nashville, hole number 16 has a pond. That's an old iron mine. Has a lot of my golf balls in it. Our P. Joseph Robb County Park, between Seven Valleys and Jefferson. It's a gated community, but it has mine shafts. So some of the mining was done underground, and Rob shows a great history of underground mining. And yes, we do. We still do bat counts there. Usually every February we go in and count the bat population, because we were hit by the white nose syndrome back in 2013 really hard. And the populations aren't really coming up at this point yet. So that's the bat hanging on the right-hand side. So, you know why bats hang upside down? This is true. They're not like a bird. They can't take off. So they hang upside down to get the speed to take off. But one time I did see a bat on the mine floor at Rob. Hey, what are you doing down there? He said, yoga. And we had we had the iron furnaces producing the product. They had iron ore, so we had furnaces. So a manor furnace down here outside of Felton. The York furnace over Otter Creek, Margarina, near East Prospect, Cador's furnace, which is of course the best restored one, and the Mary Ann furnace, now on the property of Cador State Park. And nothing left of that, of Mary Ann furnace. That's been a project of mine for a number of years. And then we were hit by an asteroid. We weren't here, but the lower Chesapeake Bay was. 35 million years ago, a comet or an asteroid came in and at Cape Charles and made a lot of disturbance. And it could have it probably did a lot of damage to our crust up here. A lot of things that we're actually attributing to the plate tectonics theory may have been done by the comet. Susquehanna River, that's a whole different story. It is one of the oldest rivers in the world. The glacial period, when the ice melted northern Pennsylvania, water came gallivanting down the Susquehanna River. Ice did not get this far south. That's the main thing I preach to everybody. There was no glaciers here, 50 miles north of Harrisburg, as you can see right there. But the meltwater, the Susquehanna River was 3 times as high as it is now. It downcut very rapidly, and up at the foul mouth, below 3 Mile Island, in the rock diabase. That rock keeps coming back to haunt us. Very hard rock. Look at the potholes that the river has formed in the diabase. That took a lot of work for the water to form those potholes that Roxanne and I can get into. So when the river's way down, you can go out there and see them when there's a drought. So finally, here we go. Summarize what I just told you. We had the supercontinent Rodinia. That's broke apart down here. We had the ocean and the building of the continental shelf reflected in York County rocks. The volcanic islands collided about that time to our east, though. Very little was felt here. And then we had the collision of Africa and North America to help form Pangea come together, the second supercontinent. And that split apart during the Triassic period into the Jurassic. And then we had extensive weathering and erosion. Some places, people that specialize in this field of weathering and erosion have calculated that we have lost 4 to 5 miles of crust over our heads in the last 160 million years. That's all gone down to our continental shelf, into the bay, into the ocean, and finally the Ice Age. So I'm getting a little tired. I did have a blast here tonight. Okay. And that's a sunset in Arizona. So, oops, there we go. So thank you very much.
Can you give us any inkling about the topological, all the, right here in southern York County, all the steep, there's no straight roads anywhere. Everything is crooked in every direction. What caused that?
Follow the cow paths, the way the cows went home,
Yeah.
or the easiest way to
What?
build a road instead of going down into the ravines is go around it. You know, instead
What caused all those steep valleys?
just the weathering of the rock, the weathering and the erosion. Some of this, down here, some of the schist, the metamorphic rocks, some are pretty hard, some are pretty soft. So the soft winds weather away quicker, make the valleys, and the harder winds make the ridges, or it could be quartzite in there too, which is a harder rock. So it's all on the durability of the rock, or sometimes a fault. Fault cracks the rock, and weathering and erosion gets sped up.
To build off that question, what was causing the weathering and erosion? Was it water or wind or?
Just natural elements. You know, water,
Rain?
permafrost, just like today. You know, actually, we think our landscape today is what we call neutral. It is eroding down, but at the same time, our crust is rising up. Remember, we had the Ice Age in this area, ending about 8,000 years ago. So our crust got pushed down by the weight of the glaciers, and now it's rebounding slowly.
But the oceans are rising.
Oceans are rising now too, with the meltwater in the north and south, right? So right now we call our landscape neutral. It's eroding down, but we're also being pushed up a little bit. Now. Another 300 million years from now, you can look forward to this. We're going to have another supercontinent coming together.
But it looks like there were two separate rifting
That's what we're paying you, is trying to pull apart, you mean?
Right,
Yeah.
and the rifting events just happen a few miles apart or something, right?
Well, they weren't continuous, the rift valleys. Just like over the Red Sea. That goes into Ethiopia and northern Africa too, but it's not continuous. That's why Africa has volcanoes in the northern part. It's sitting on that rift. Yeah.
So, I've been, isn't there something going on in the ocean to the west of Africa? It seems like right, kind of where you were talking about that the rift is occurring now. Is that related, or, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I didn't
There's
understand.
like something happening in the water off the coast close to there. So I'm just wondering, when you mentioned the rift
Oh.
is there currently, I was wondering if maybe that's related?
There's a subduction zone going on there,
Okay,
where one place going beneath another,
okay, okay,
around the Mediterranean.
okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, there is a subduction zone going.
Something, they're just noticing some changes in the water, I assume. Somebody's monitoring it, I guess.
That's where the lost continent went. Atlantis
Okay, well, there you go.
was the theory, going into a subduction zone.
Okay.
All right, well, I hope you learned a little bit, and thanks for joining us in person and the ones on Facebook or YouTube. That's kind of York County Geology, kind of in a nutshell. But visit us at jonesgeo.us or send us an email. We'd love to hear from you all. And
I have a question about that tour. I know you did one not that long ago, that whole area. Is that,
Yeah, but
that's different?
back in May we did the Southwest York County
Okay,
tour. Actually the Pigeon Hills and Cador State Park.
okay.
Gina was on that one as a.
It's a great tour.
That was a
I would
gift.
definitely recommend definitely once.
It was really down to earth.
You're full of shit.
And where do we have the information about the tours coming up?
If you go into the Spring Grove area Historical Society, their flyers are on there under bus trips. It's initialized, so it's SGAHS.org is their website. Lunch is included, and fear of repeaties, I have to come up with some new jokes. So, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Maybe the rain has stopped by now.
Oh, I know.